Hi, everyone. Welcome to Confidently Be You. My name is Jennifer Shlomovich, and today my special guest is Sara Mizrachi, who is the owner and designer of Sara Sela Jewelry. And today we're going to talk about a very important topic, which is overcoming fear and rejection. Sara, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited.
I'm very excited to have you here. And so before we dive into this really important topic, why don't we get to know you a little bit more? And first, I'm going to ask you, how did you discover your passion for making jewelry?
I honestly don't know when it first began. I was little, and it was just always a thing. But the one thing I remember when it really just, it was like that was it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a rainy day and my best friend was over and we were just kind of bored, not knowing what we wanted to do. And then we're like, oh, let's just go to, I think it was Fabric Bonanza, like all those decades ago, just, get stuff. And we got like clay, plastic beads and some other stuff. And we came, going back to my house and started making things, and I made a necklace, and I remember it was actually like burgundy and black. But she had such a reaction to it. It was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I love it. And that moment just like cemented it for me that it was, I knew I loved it, but that was like, oh, I can go somewhere with this. And I was like, 13, and it just, I know something about like her reaction to it and the genuine, thank you, genuine love. Thank you, Sima. The genuine love for it. It just, it built such confidence right away.
Mm-hmm.
So from that point on is when I actually started, like my mom would come with me. I would go selling at flea markets, like literally at bingo halls. And I built my way up from like using plastic and clay to Swarovski and glass seed beads until I got like all to the pretty gemstones and stuff. But that was kind of it. It was always something I was doing. And then at that point, it just felt right.
Awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like it's fun how like you just try something randomly and then all of a sudden it becomes this new passion in your life, and you discover all these new things about yourself and your talents.
Well, I mean, my mom still has necklaces from like, I don't even know when I was using those pony beads and like those triangular, whatever, those three thing beads. And she sells a ton of stuff I made from, I don't even know how young I was. I'd have to ask her if she remembers.
Nice. And so how long have you had your business?
So it was official in 2007. I think it was early January, but it was 2007 when I actually went to the courthouse and got my business certificate and everything else, because I needed to start up. I needed to get a bank account going and all that stuff so I can actually, then at that point, to take payments, etc. But so it's been a long time.
Time flies.
14 years. Almost 15 years.
Wow, you're right. We're like almost into 2022 now.
I mean, I'm 35. It's just like that. It's literally, I mean, it was not quite half my life, but it's just,
it's been a good part of your life. Awesome. And so what have been your biggest challenges of owning your own business?
Well, of course, it's always wanting to support yourself, and financially, and also just, if you're going to do it, having that confidence and just kind of also enjoying it, especially in the beginning, like just enjoy it. Don't put all this pressure, but it's definitely the hardest part is definitely making sure if there's something you're really going to do, to have some kind of idea that, okay, I want to make jewelry and I want to sell it. Make sure you are keeping your budget, because it's very easy to go over, and just try to have fun with it, play with colors, play with things, play with all the gems, play with the glass, play with everything, and just let yourself enjoy. And if you start to wanting to sell it, expectations can be rough.
Mhm.
Having expectations can be rough. So you really have to go in it with a very easygoing way of thinking, especially at first. Because if you're overthinking it and you're going to make yourself, just nervous and anxious, and it's not worth doing. It's not.
I can relate to that with my creativity, with my business, even though it's a different form of creativity when you're writing and creating content. Pressure is such a killer of creativity, and it can really freeze you up. And when you have pressure of like expectations, and it just totally sucks the fun out of it. And so when you focus on just having fun and experimenting and trying things, like I feel like that really does fuel a creative environment for yourself to be able to create things that you want to create, whether it's jewelry or anything.
Yeah. Also, sometimes it's better because if, let's say, you have a customer, or just someone wants to talk to you about it, if you start to get, I think one of the problems I would have was I would be not defensive, but I'd be a little bit too closely tied to the item. And you're not supposed to do that. You are supposed to be able to let go. If you do want to sell it and make this your thing, you do have to be able to take a step back and let it go. It is your creative expression, like it's your baby in a way, but you have to be able to let it go. Because if you are talking to somebody, you don't want them to be turned away, or to just be off put by your nervousness. You're better off just kind of talking to them sometimes, even about your process. And you never know, some people get really pulled in by it. And it also helps your confidence anyway, because they're enjoying this conversation. They want to hear about what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you express yourself. And you're better off just really taking it easy instead of already like bottom line, bottom line, bottom line. It's really just, enjoy it. Talk about your life with these people. It doesn't really matter, honestly. Sometimes that's the best way to just put yourself out there, is just totally be willing to be open.
Yeah, it's just that authentic connection. Because when we buy something, especially when it's something handmade by somebody, you want to connect with that person as the individual, versus if you're buying something from like a mass produced company, it's a totally different experience.
Story.
Right. Exactly. You have that opportunity to understand the story behind the creation. And that in itself can add an element of something special. And so what are some things that you have done to like overcome some of these challenges that you've experienced?
I think a lot of mental stretching,
Mm.
Like where you really have to stop yourself and maybe meditate, but you have to really stop yourself, because we could be our own worst enemies. I remember when I'd be applying to stores around Brooklyn, and I also at the time had a very different product, but I had a different mentality. It was like, trying to, I would overthink, like trying to figure out what would they accept in their store without being, too much in competition with other designers that they had in the store, instead of just being like my genuine self and just going with it. And being confident that no matter what, I like my product. I know I have a good product, and it doesn't matter what they say. I definitely there was plenty of rejection to go around when still living in New York. There was definitely plenty of rejection. I don't know if what I have now, if it would have, I'm sure it could have been different than what I had then. Although I loved what I was doing then. I made like, this big statement pieces that it required a little bit more thought, I guess, as opposed to something simplified like what I'm doing now. But there was plenty of rejection, and it was a lot, to just kind of talk yourself out of it. But also, if you have like doing certain markets and fairs, I started networking with other artists, and that's one of the most important things you could do, actually, is make some artist friends. if you're out somewhere, even if you're just in their shop, make friends, talk to them, because everybody has had rejection. And the
Yeah.
best way is just finding people who can relate to you and, walk you through their process or what they went through, and just kind of, brainstorm together, or just, get a pep talk. Get a pep talk from somebody else. Try to give yourself a pep talk, because it's not worth it to dwell on it. It gets too difficult. You can't, and then it just stops you from wanting to be creative and just, being you.
Yeah, and that and I can totally relate to that. It's when you put your heart and soul in something and you're creating something, it's like your baby. And when you're excited to share it with others and you don't get the same level of excitement in return, it can be hurtful. And it does take time to build that resilience. The more you keep putting yourself out there and doing that like inner work, there's a lot of pep talks involved.
Yeah,
I have found with myself.
It has to be. That's the only real way. I remember, I think the worst was not even necessarily being told no, was when you would never get a response in return.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes that's worse. At least if you get a no, you're getting an answer. And sometimes, if they're nice enough, you can still talk to them. Like, I would always like to go into the stores, browse them, talk to the people who work there. I mean, now especially, like, I'll pop on my Instagram, like, show them stuff. But I mean, that would be that would be preferable than when they would just, not say anything at all. And then you have to check up and ask them questions and follow up and then hope they answer. So I think that's honestly harder sometimes than just getting a straight up no.
Sure, that's understandable. And also too, one thing I've learned is sometimes a no isn't a no forever.
Right.
Sometimes no's can just be a no for now. And so part of that networking with just people in general, if they say no, they might think of you down the line if they need a gift for somebody or they need something for an event. Maybe they didn't want to buy a piece of jewelry at that moment, or maybe they didn't resonate with something at that time, but then down the line things can change.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and the more you start experiencing those no's, the easier it gets.
I mean, even recently, I follow a local, like, one of those, I'm in a few of them now, but like these local shops that have all the local artists. And there's one that I want to get into. And I sent it, like, filled out the form, whatever, and sent it in. And it was actually just a couple days after she'd actually posted about rejection, and if somebody says no, doesn't mean it's it's forever and ever and ever and never ever ever ever, and we don't like you personally. Like, it really is. It has nothing to do with you as a person. It has nothing to do with anything except at that moment, if it's a no, it's a no, and that's it. And I had put in my application, and she emailed me and said, at the moment, of course, there's a lot of jewelry in the shops and I'm on the wait list. I'm like, okay, great. And also keeping that attitude is such a good thing, because now we're also in constant contact on Instagram.
Yeah.
I like their stuff, they like my stuff, and they comment. So even if they say no, you have to be able to get over it, because you want to create those good vibes. You want to create that positivity, because if you could keep up that contact. If you keep up that contact and create, the friendly, positivity, it's a good thing, because you never know. And either way, they'll think of you more.
Right.
They'll think of you, they'll remember you, and they're going to be more likely to be like, oh yeah, I know her. Great. It's as opposed to just, I would feel, sometimes I would feel personally offended at first when, like, I started trying and getting no's, because it's hard, but it really has nothing to do with you. It's just, they have to make their decisions for themselves too. And you just have to move on to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what are some other things that you have done that have helped you overcome fear and rejection?
So I think, honestly, I guess I wish I knew of them a lot sooner. I'm a part of a PR marketing group on, well, they're on Facebook, but of course, like, it's a membership thing, but you have, like, you know, dozens of women doing all different kinds of things. And it's just always a constant conversation where, like, you could post something and ask questions for suggestions, or just everybody can talk to each other about their struggles, or, you know, something that they want to pursue, because also this group offers opportunities that everybody can apply for, so everybody can kind of riff off of each other and just talk, because there are times, of course, where things don't go as you would like them to go, and it's just a nice place where there's a concentration of all these other, at least for me, like, all these other small businesses owned by women that you can talk to and relate to. And it's always a very nice thing to be able to kind of, like, if there's, you know, very specific, you know, problem, you can just ask and, you know, post it in there, and somebody will be responding in a matter of minutes. So I think if you can find, you know, find those people, find the groups of, you know, well, there, I know millions of them out there, but if you could find something of the collective of people who do what you do, or like to do what you do, or you want to do what they do, and create a community.
Yeah, absolutely. Supportive community is so important, especially when you're trying to do something different from the people around you. So if you're creating a business, you want to connect with other people who are also business owners, entrepreneurs, creators, and even if they're not doing exactly the same type of work as you, but they're doing their own version of creativity and they're marketing their business, you can learn so much from other people's experiences, and there's a sense of camaraderie when you're able to connect with others. I have also joined some groups with my being a owner of my coaching business, and it's helped me anyway overcome my own, like, personal challenges and fears, because you have other people who you can talk to who can support you, and they understand because they went through it yourself. And your family, like, family can only, I feel, and friends can be supportive only to a certain point, but they're not going to fully understand it because they haven't gone through it. And sometimes I find family can try to be, like, overprotective. They're trying to protect you, and so they may not give you what they mean is they're trying to be supportive, but it's not supportive in the way that you need them to be supportive.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Well, it's also sometimes, like, when you want to just, you know, vent and be like, what's wrong?
Right.
You don't want to get a response, or like an answer or a solution. You just want to talk.
Right. Like the fixing the problems for you, and what you're not looking at it the same way. You're just venting out of frustration.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Supportive community is a very, very helpful thing to do. And I think also just what you said too about just connecting with other artists, other people who are doing, and just get to know, ask questions. You know, maybe you can find a mentor. Yeah, you know, mentoring is so helpful, or just somebody who's willing to, you know, sit with you for 30 minutes and answer your questions. A lot of people love sharing their knowledge and helping. And so that's definitely important. Are there any other tips that you have about overcoming fear and rejection?
Never compare yourself to somebody else. Never.
Yes.
There are people, I'm very happy to be part of this group, because I mean, there are women in there who've had far more successes than I have with either, you know, having their pieces placed on TV shows, whatever, or people who have then approached them independently, and they're getting all these opportunities. Never compare yourself to them. Everybody has their own path and has their own life. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean also that you can never get to that point. I mean, this year alone, I've come so far. I mean, especially after new baby, then we moved here, then lockdown, so stuck home with 2 little kids for months on end. And then, things started opening back up, and here we are still in, we're in a new city because we only moved to here, less than 2 years ago. And thank you, cats. And from March, I'm in 3 local stores, and I have
nice.
multiple wholesale, not retailers obviously, but wholesale placements online and in person happening. And that's all since March. And that was also because I would also just go in there and be happy. Like the first store that I got into, I was actually not rejected at first, but I was put on a wait list because they were full. But when they contacted me, and it was a few months later, I think I first maybe applied, maybe possibly even the late summer or something like last year. And, it was just a matter of patience. And all of a sudden I got the email. I'm like, oh, great. So I didn't let it get to me, and it moved on. There was enough going on anyway.
Right.
But since then, I put myself out there, and I found, honestly, through Instagram also was huge, because like with that group, and then we're connected with each other on Instagram. So I've asked a lot of questions from people specifically, because if they post something of how they got onto like Hello Abound or anything like that, like I asked them for tips. How could I do that too? Because also as a small batch, kind of product business owner, how could I make something like that viable to get myself out there so retailers can find me? I decided to just ask. I've had some really nice people. They have no problem answering questions. They're not going to try to prevent you from moving forward in your life unless they know you personally and for some reason have a strange vendetta against you. And I've also helped push people along too, even if they make jewelry. Everybody has their own thing. And it's so nice when people answer you. Like it's really very nice. But never compare yourself to somebody else's successes. I mean, failure sometimes you can compare yourself to, but it doesn't have to be in a negative way, because then you can commiserate and also help each other. But it really doesn't help to be like, oh, I want to have had this many placements or be this far along, or, being able to have my business where it's a full time, although right now it feels like it. Because of the work I'm trying to accomplish in such small pockets of time when Adela is napping. So it's really, you're better off you really need to have a positive attitude. You really just have to, and it'll take you a lot further than just, sitting and wallowing in your own sadness that you're putting on yourself for no reason.
Yeah, when you were saying that no one's gonna block you or try to prevent you, we're the ones who are preventing ourselves. Usually we're our own worst enemies when it comes to putting ourselves out there. And it's okay it's creating a balance. Like, you're gonna have your feelings, things are gonna get triggered. So it's giving yourself space to feel what you're feeling, but then not letting it stop you from doing that. And yeah, everyone has their own journey. There's no one has the same cookie cutter journey in life with anything. And if you're taking a different path than somebody else, that just means there's different lessons for you.
Yeah.
And when I first started my business, the first 2-3 years was just me learning what doesn't work for me. And I think that's a big part of it. Yeah. And I've spoken to many other business owners. the so-called failures are not really failures. They're just lessons.
Yes.
And those lessons are going to set you up for bigger success down the line. You just don't know at the time when you're in the middle of it and it feels crappy because you're not where you want to be. But then when you get to where you want to be and then you look back and you're like, oh, now I understand why my journey had to unfold this way. So a tip I would throw in there is trust the unfolding of your unique journey.
Yeah, I remember when I first started working with my first ever PR company, and it was very expensive, but I could afford it at the time, although I had help. And like thinking back, like, of course, I hate that I spent all that money because I didn't accomplish what I would have hoped to have accomplished, but I wouldn't have evolved. I mean, my business aim also evolved from using them, but I wouldn't have evolved to my way of designing now the same way that I probably would have if they hadn't had, and challenged me to be like, oh, this is what this person wants you to send them. Or let's look at designs. They'd sit down with me and we would try to, figure out something new, or let's just, evolve in one way or another with how I was designing my pieces. So as much as I hate having given them all that money, it got me, it took me from what I was doing, which wasn't as sustainable. Even, I mean, yeah, okay, I was selling, but especially before the recession, once the recession, it was even better to kind of start over. But that took me to where I am now, which makes it easier, takes the load off my plate. Although I can buy all the expensive, pretty things. But it really changes a lot when you just stop overthinking and just kind of be like, oh, how can I do what I love? How can I create this design, but just not overthink it? Just like, oh, put a couple things together and be like, I like it. Just don't overthink it. It's almost like, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, I remember that saying.
It's so rude, but it's so true.
Maybe we could change it to keep it simple, silly.
Just something nicer. But if I hadn't dealt with all of that and like slowly, I wouldn't have gotten to where I was, even dealing with, I guess the rejections that I dealt with, or like things that didn't pan out. Like I remember I with those first people I had gifted Fifth Harmony, but then I never got pictures. I was promised pictures with product, whatever, but it got me and taught me a lot about what I should do as a whole, as a business, and what I shouldn't do, like what's not worth my time, what's not, what doesn't really work.
Those are all very valuable lessons. They're painful in the moment.
Yeah.
But I think too, as you get through those, it builds that resilience. It builds those like rejection muscles. You start to get used to it and it doesn't phase you anymore. And I think also when you shift your focus on the why are you doing what you're doing? Why is it important to you? And you focus on that and you make it about what this means to you and not what it might mean to other people, that also can push you forward through all of that. So what are some tips that you would like to share with others who want to turn their passion into a business?
Well, I guess you can always start small. If you're not quite ready necessarily to leave your job or something and you want to get into painting, keep it till after, see what sparks your interest. But then let's say you start going to work and all you can think about is painting, then of course you have to figure out what you want to do. But I guess it's always better just to start small, like start experimenting. I have a friend back in Cincinnati that actually a long time ago, she bought all this jewelry stuff and didn't really do much with it. And then the last year or so that she's really at this point working from home, she's in all these meetings that she actually doesn't need to be in, but either way, it also keeps her busy at the same time. She started making jewelry again.
Oh, wow.
While being on these meetings. And it was a way for her to be able to focus and also keep herself calm when she didn't have to be in meetings.
That's a creative way of getting through.
Right. So it was
It's a
one,
different
instead
kind
of
of
like
productivity.
knitting or something, it was a way for her to be able to sit at the meeting and actually stay, stay in place and just also fuel this creative process. And now, of course, she's doing it more and more. And it's so funny, like gradually I'm seeing her sink into like how I did, like where you start off with these very simplified, inexpensive materials, and now she's getting deeper and deeper into the hole. And I took her, actually, when we went back in the summer, I took her to the beach store that I like to go to, and she was happy, but at the same time she's like, no, why have you brought me here? I'm gonna have to come back now. Because also they moved a lot closer to where we used to live, so it would be easier for her to get there. But it's so funny, I'm watching her do the same thing. I mean, she's still working, but that was one way she started to do this for herself, was keeping her mind and body active while being on all these Zoom meetings. So I guess it's always just started slowly. If you really, if all of a sudden you really just, if you don't have to care about finances, and you want to get into it, and you have the space. Also, it's good to have the space, of course, some kind of open corner, some kind of something where you can, keep that for yourself. Garage, anything, that's always helpful too, because it's much easier than taking up the dining room. Or when I started back in my parents' house, I would have in the family room, that's where I had my desk, like against the wall there. And then of course I started having more things, so then more furniture was added. when we moved to the apartment, then I had like that whole corner of the dining room down there. And it was just, then things start getting a little bit
a little busy.
Too much space. So it's always good to have a place that you can set aside that's going to be more space for this purpose. And definitely start it slow. Don't, because it's very easy to get caught up with any art materials whatsoever. Just anything to do with art. If you're writing, I guess it's more simplified, because that just really takes a private space if you want it. But it's always just start small. I started small when I first started getting into, and then playing around and building up my own confidence, until I just, now I have a whole room full of stuff and there's no room for it in there. And I need to properly organize things. But especially for me, when I love to have things organized, but it always gets away from you, and especially with the kids and just, life moves on. So you just make sure to carve out that space for yourself. Definitely.
Absolutely. I just want to tag on with the writing, because I do a lot of writing work. Sometimes you just don't feel creative flow. But sometimes you have to just show up and just write stuff and carve out that time. So what's been helpful for me, and I've taken some writing courses on this, is just having that brain dump. Again, not being attached to outcome. And just you give yourself time, whether it's 30 minutes during a specific day or how many days a week you want to do it, 30 minutes, an hour. I try to carve out an hour a few times a week, at least, where I'm just going to write, whether I'm inspired to write or not. I'm just going to write.
Or and then stare at the wall for a good half hour until
sometimes you do, or sometimes you need to listen to some music. But it's important to carve out that time and carve out a space. One of the things that helps me is at home, even though no one might be distracting me, I still feel distracted because I'll start looking at all these things I need to be doing. So one of the things I like to do is a couple times a week, I like to take my laptop to the coffee shop, get some coffee or tea, and I have such a productive hour or two that I'm there. And I think, and just that environment, the energy of the environment you're in. So having a space that you can really feel good about creating.
It's very different.
Yeah, and making sure you set time to commit, and you want to make sure you are having fun with it, because
You can't push
And
yourself to
again,
do it.
yeah.
Then again with pressure, then you're just
Mhm.
putting unnecessary pressure on yourself. But that's what I also love about having that room, even though we also use it as a
Mhm.
guest space, so there's a bed in there, it still feels like my space. And
Right.
like, especially when, you know, Adela's napping and nobody else is home other than the cats, of course, it's quiet, it's peaceful, and I can just be, it feels like I'm in a separate place altogether.
Mhm.
Like it's a different vibe, a different part of the house. It's like it's slightly separate, even though it's obviously in the house. It's a separate area. So just when I walk in there, it's like it's my space, my, you know, just everything is just around that.
Mhm.
Not having to do with anything else, you know, not having to do with laundry and dishes or anything else. It's just about that. It's about what I love to do.
That is so important to have. And that in itself is self-care. When you can have your own little corner to call yourself,
I
call
made
for yourself,
sure,
call your own.
like that had to be in the bargain of wherever, like when we were looking at houses, like that had to be part of the planning of where would my space be. Because
Mhm.
no matter what, even if I was just doing this for myself, I do it for myself anyway, even though I also sell. It's for me. I love doing it. It's attached to my soul. It's just, that's the way it is. It
Yeah.
brings me joy. That a lot of things, you know, they bring you, children bring you joy, but it's different. It's very different when, especially when it's just you, yourself, and your creative brain, and just letting it go, just letting all that stuff flow out. It's
Yeah.
totally different.
Yeah, it's when you experience joy through creativity and you just focus on that, then everything else is just bonus stuff, really, because you're doing what makes you happy. You're doing it for yourself. So all the other things that you can get from that, from selling and growing a business, those are the little bonuses that come along when you're focusing on your joy.
I mean, definitely also had the opportunities like this last year, getting into the different stores. And
Mhm.
last year, I think it almost got me through the year. I think when I had submitted earrings for This Is Us, and then seeing them on TV, I think that honestly got me through, because the show aired like just maybe 3 weeks before lockdown. So it was like,
Wow.
when, you know, we didn't even know what was about to hit us, but then it got me through that year, because that was my way of, then I used it to reach out, used it in marketing, used it as my way to make any kind of income whatsoever. And people found me, though. People found me all over the world, from Tokyo, Canada,
Wow.
several times to the UK. And I mean, that was the first time I ever shipped to Tokyo. That was really cool.
Wow, that
I
sounds
mean,
like an amazing opportunity.
I've shipped to Germany. It was just, for people, you know, to find you, and it's also very validating, of course. But
Yeah.
that was one of my biggest successes, of course, is just getting, you know, it's a chance, because you don't know if you're sending into any of these things, you don't know what's going to happen. You have to get, you know, it has to be up to the costume designer. If you get lucky, you get lucky. But that really helped a lot.
Yeah, I'm
Here,
sure.
that helped a lot.
And not to
Although those
mention, it's
things
a
are a
great
pain
show.
in the
I
butt
love
to
that
make.
show.
Those earrings are a pain in the butt to make. And
Mhm.
I actually had to find a source for the quartz that I used, because I had gotten a strand of it
Mhm.
from a store in Manhattan that closed, I think actually in 2019. And my mom couldn't, I was like, I wanted to be able to go. It was in June 2019. I got there like a month and a half or so too late. But
Oh,
so like that was fun. I had to source for materials, and I was getting all these orders, and it kept me like in the groove of actually doing things, instead of course, just I would have just been making stuff anyway. But it really, you know, like it gave me that purpose for my business, and for my, you know, for my confidence. So, I mean, I don't want to know what it would have been like without having those last years.
That's an amazing opportunity. And it's moments like that. If we have moments like that all the time, we wouldn't appreciate them.
It's true.
So when those moments do pop up, we have like an extra layer of appreciation for it, because all that work and that whole journey that you've gone through, and then it leads to something like that. It's really, really, it's just really exciting when you have those moments that we wouldn't appreciate if we had them every day.
It's true, but then you just can't be disappointed. Don't be too disappointed if because I've sent all other pieces for the show, and I sent also for this season. So I think there are altogether 3 other pieces that still opportunity for them to wear. Although it also could be like the costume designer takes it with them to another show. So then you never know if somebody, because there are people within the group that I'm attached to that, are spotters, or there are people that, they see it before you do, and everybody's like letting everybody else know if they've seen it and checking up on each other, which is really nice.
That's nice.
So I still have an opportunity. We'll see what happens this year. I know somebody from the group last year, I don't know, they chose like at least 3 of her pieces through the season.
Wow.
That's just amazing. But you have
awesome.
to let go of the jealousy. 100%, you gotta let go of the jealousy, even though like part of me wishes like, of course I wish, that happened to me, but not like it can't happen or it won't happen.
And it has happened. You've had those things happen. So
that's the thing, that like the opportunity that I had, obviously other people did not have. And I think even for me, even though like her earrings were worn and other pieces she had were worn, to watch the episode and the fact that it was Mandy Moore, I always feel like that makes it like that spotlight is different sometimes than on other characters, or like it was also the whole sequence that made it so special. Being on her and that whole sequence just made it so special because they were just right there. And
wow.
So even though other people have had these successes, for me, mine still feels, no matter what, so special that even though I wish I had more quantity, but the quality of it was just really something. And I would definitely not want to, take that back or, change it for something else at all.
That's a really inspiring story. And it just goes to show that you keep sticking with something for a long time, and the more you're consistent with it, and the more you show up with it, more things are going to come to you. You just don't know when it's going to happen, but when it happens, it's like, wow, this is awesome. So this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with everyone. And before we wrap up, what are some resources you would like to recommend to anyone who's interested in turning their passion into a business?
Okay, so annoying as it would be to say this, I guess Facebook does have its uses. Yeah. Unfortunately, Facebook definitely has its uses. Definitely find groups, whether online, because now it might be easier to do it online, or in person. Because I also know, of course, there are always these people that have, like those open studios where you can go, or rent space or whatever. But Google anything that's related to what you want to do. And if it's a Facebook group that's about gardening or about, painting, that's definitely one way to go. And then I would also say visit small businesses that do what you love. Try to spark up some kind of conversation. Because I've done that before, because I also love to garden. And it's very easy just to go in one of those shops, you start asking questions, you talk about it, you share. It's always a good idea. It doesn't hurt to do anything like that, to go into any kind of small business that they do what you do, and create that connection and try to, put yourself out there, because also they can lead you different directions. I didn't even like, I actually had gone to the local bead store here, and that's how I started my journey with that first store that I got into. So, and that led me to the other stores because of the woman who owns that shop has pieces there. And she also then had her stuff in other stores. And then I followed and we helped each other. So it really doesn't hurt to go to a local shop and just ask.
Great way to network, great way to
just
learn
talk.
from other people's experiences.
I mean, even I guess sometimes libraries, most libraries have business classes, or they have score. That's how I actually did that a lot. After college, I went to a lot of these business courses through the library, because they offer different classes that can involve anything from advice to how to get insurance for your business, how to start a business plan, how to get any little thing. So definitely also ask your local librarian to, to try to move you along, because someone will help. I mean, there are librarians. My mom was a librarian for 40 years. I mean, they're very helpful. That's also a very good way, because they can lead you also to not only books, of course, on the item, whatever your passion is, but those business courses were also a great way to network. And some of them actually do have networking nights out or whatever, they have these opportunities too. So, and maybe if you're looking to take classes, those are things to do also. If you want to take, any kind of, well, it doesn't have to be college, but, looking for classes on how to blow glass. I don't know if it still exists. I know New York Urban Glass. I almost did it. I really want to do it. Someday I still want to do glass blowing. But
that would be an interesting thing to try.
It's like even looking at classes that just offer, not for a degree, but just to have classes, cooking classes, any of that kind of thing. And it's one way to get you in the door, to also, dip your toe in and see how it feels, and also to meet other people who do what you love, and they can also help show you the way. All you need is that one connection.
That's true. That is so true. Also, Meetup. Meetup is a great resource, because you have various hobby groups on there, various artist groups, creators, but then you also have the business meetups where there are networking events and just opportunities to connect with other people in business. So Meetup is also a great resource and all of that too, because you can learn from other people. You can hang out with other people who are learning a certain craft. Then you also can connect with other business people as well.
That helps me. I didn't even know about Meetup.
Oh, good. So,
I've been doing a lot of it through Instagram. Like, I'm a part of like this small one of the different, so just a few other women, and we're trying to, we're creating a group for ourselves, just so we're keeping up with each other's posts, and because just to help with all of the, the general flow, but because of course all that stuff ends up leading to more views, but it's been kind of true. But we're trying to just help each other, propel each other forward, even though most of us make jewelry. But it's good that way we have that connection, because then we also start talking and asking each other questions. And even a couple of people have had some unfortunate situations, so we're just offering each other support. So, if you just, it's funny. It's like there really are so many ways to just kind of get out there, but I think sometimes it's also easy to get overwhelmed if you're not, if you're not sure, if you haven't done it before. It's just very easy to overthink it.
Absolutely, because there's so much, especially now, there's so much information everywhere. You can get overwhelmed just with information overload. Also, one other thing, Eventbrite. I joined a while back a women's business group that I used to meet up with that I found through Eventbrite. So Eventbrite also is a great way where you can network with other people and connect with other people. either for networking or just taking classes. Eventbrate's also a great tool, great resource to utilize. I'm getting tongue-tied now. This was great. It was so nice connecting with you on here. And what's a good way for people to connect with you and check out your work?
Well, I'm gonna have an Etsy site, but as much as I like Etsy at the same time, I think they've lost a little bit of their direction. So I have my website, saraselajewelry.com, SaraSelaJewelry.com. And of course, email is saraselajewelry@gmail.com. And that, you can get me anytime, any kind of questions whatsoever. Instagram handles the same thing, so you can get me through there if you don't want to email. And then Etsy shop is whatever it is, etsy.com/shop/Sara Sela.
So you know what I'll do is I'll include all the links. If you can send me the links to everything, and then I'll include them in the notes below this video. And then this way, if anyone wants to connect with you, they can just click on the links and reach out.
That works for me too. It's better than trying to make sure I'm getting my spelling right. So mess up the rewind 5 times.
I know, yeah. I always try to throw in the links for anyone who comes over for an interview. This way, it's easy for people to find everything that way. So Sara, it was a pleasure having you on here. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you found some of this helpful and valuable. And if there's something you're really passionate about and you want to give it a try, start small and ask questions and just taking some little action. I think the biggest challenge is sometimes we want to just have it all figured out all at once, and just letting things evolve over time and just start somewhere.
100%.
All right. Thanks so much, Sara. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.